Grizzlies fans, welcome back into the Grind City Media mock draft of 2024. We are all the way down to double digits officially. Andy Larsen joins me to represent the Utah Jazz. I am excited for this one because I have absolutely not a clue who Utah is going to go with in this mock draft. Before we actually get to the pick, Andy, can I ask you, let me set the scene first for people who may not have watched the Utah Jazz. They went 31-51 this season, but there was a whole lot of injuries. So you look at the record and you're like, I don't think that team was as bad as the record shows. And if Grizzlies fans are watching that, I'm sure they can relate to that. But they have this shot with a top 10 pick to accelerate this rebuild with this year's draft, surrounding guys like Lauri Markkanen, who's an all-star, Jordan Clarkson, Keontae George, Colin Sexton, John Collins, Walker Kessler. Like, there's so many names that this team should be good moving forward, plus a top 10 pick. All that to say, Andy, do you think initially you go for fit or best player available?
Always best player available, but I think especially in this draft, where and especially with this roster a little bit, where there aren't super duper stars.
Yeah.
Lauri Markkanen has absolutely raised his game in the last couple seasons and is, made the All-Star game 2 years ago, was close to that last year, but he still looks like a player you can put any kind of player around, right? And I think that's true for the rest of the Jazz's roster. I think there are some names that a lot of NBA fans are familiar with. You named them off, but I don't think any of them are irreplaceable or would necessarily get in the way of someone they draft. So I think they have a lot of flexibility with this pick.
Which is kind of even more exciting or terrifying, whichever way you look at it. Let's put you on the clock representing the Utah Jazz. Andy Larsen, who are we drafting?
I'm taking, with number 10 pick of the 2024 NBA draft, I'm taking Matas Buzelis.
Okay, tell me why.
He's a really talented prospect. Honestly, a guy a lot of teams thought could be in the running for the number one pick about a year ago. 6'9", 6'8", 6'9", wing player who has just shown a variety of tools over the course of his career. I think kind of the thing he's been most consistent at is playmaking and passing for others, kind of as a secondary good decision maker with that size and kind of ability to see over the defense a little bit. Along with some good team defense instincts, has always been good at like help side blocks and chase down blocks and stuff in transition. The shooting is kind of a question mark, where he was an awesome shooter in his last year of high school and then was a really bad shooter in the G League level. So needs to kind of figure that out. And then, there is like some question of whether or not he's going to be like actually a dribble drive guy in the NBA or just attack closeouts. But I think with the size, the youth, I got the chance to see him play here in Salt Lake City at the All-Star game last year at the NBA's Cup for youth there at their International Cup, and I think it's he was impressive to me. So I like what he can bring. I don't think he's going to be like a star player by any means, but as a guy who can potentially play maybe even starter minutes if everything fills out right. I think he's a really nice addition to what this Jazz team has on its roster.
Yeah, really good versatility, good ball handling. He's like super athletic.
Yeah.
And I like you said, so the Ignite this year, he did shoot 27% from three, which is obviously not great. But if you're not looking for him to be a shooter, obviously that's something that you can improve on. But you're telling me the shooting it doesn't scare you away. If that's his big flaw, it's not terrifying to you.
Look, normally I hate guys who can't shoot. Like, I think obviously being able to shoot in the NBA is such an important skill. What I think makes me excited about Buzelis is that he has been a good shooter and then lost it last year. And, maybe that's variance, maybe that's just a bad scheme or bad coaching situation, whatever it might be. I think he gets better shots at the NBA level. And I think if you work with NBA level shooting coaches, maybe you regain that form that he saw. I mean, he shot, let's see, it's 43% in his last high school year, right? Like that's great.
That's really good.
Yeah. So, if you can find a happy medium there or get back to 43%, all of a sudden you're a really, really high level role player. And so I think, given the options here at number 10 and some of the players that have already been selected who, also the Jazz would be interested in, I think Buzelis is a really good fit with a lot of upside that they can hope for.
I like it as well. And okay, let's just say, for argument's sake, since we're here, the Jazz take him. Okay, so now you've got him on your team. You said could play starter-ish minutes. You keep Jordan Clarkson, maybe. I know he started and wasn't to keep him 6-man. Does he play the one beside Colin Sexton? Like, how do you envision it in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, he's in my mind kind of a prototypical NBA small forward, right? Like when you could probably play a two, could probably play the four. You know, can he stay in front of quicker guys is I think a question. So you'd probably want him kind of on the lower end of that, but and needs to fill out his body for sure. But I think you know, right away he's coming off the bench realistically. You know, I think you have probably Lauri Markkanen and then probably a better prospect in front of him in Taylor Hendricks. But those guys can really battle for a position, you know, and then you have again some flexibility to train a 19-year-old into being an NBA rotation player. You know, that's my real hope for Buzelis. And then, you know, what I like about him is that he does have so many different potential paths for improvement where you know, maybe he can use that, you know, defensive ability, sorry, to become a better on-ball defender or to become a better shooter or just to become a playmaker, you know, like I think there are a lot of different ways he can be a useful NBA player. And despite a difficult G League season, like has the talent to get some of those pieces together.
Just for context, almost everyone on the Ignite had a difficult G League season. So I don't think that's something to hold against him. One thing that I do like about some of the Ignite players, and we'll talk about that with Ron Holland, is that they're so young. So they're so moldable. And so the room for potential, you know, like if you're drafting, for example, a 24-year-old, there's a reason that some teams will look at a 24-year-old and call him old. It's because how much left in the tank does he have? An 18, 19-year-old, you look at him and you're like, there's so much potential still to be happening. You're talking about him filling out. He's 210-ish right now. He's gonna get bigger. Like just naturally, you're gonna get bigger than when you're a teenager. So I think there is a lot of upside in that pick.
And I think we've seen that with some of the G League Ignite draft picks so far, and maybe not all of them, but you know, like Jonathan Kuminga from the Warriors is a guy who I see, you know, it's kind of in a similar situation where, you know, a talented prospect maybe underperformed a little bit at the G League Ignite level, and then struggled for his first year or two with the Warriors, but then found his body, kind of put it together, figured out what he could contribute in the NBA level, and I think was a relatively important part of that team. And I think, you know, it's a promising path for Buzelis to follow.
Yeah, I like it. Andy, I love the pick. We're less than a month away. We're only a few weeks away, a week-ish away from the actual NBA draft to see how it all shakes out. I appreciate your time so very much. So thank you again for coming on the mock draft.
Thanks for having me.